Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are putting two GPUs head to head, my long-serving and trusted RX 6900 XT and a brand new, bottom of the barrel though, RX 9070. It's an MSRP model from Power Color and it is the Reaper card, and it is the cheapest one that could be bought in the UK since launch. Now both these cards have been tested on my usual system, which consists of an air-cooled Ryzen 7 5800X, 32GB of DDR4 RAM running at CL3600 on the ASRock Taichi X570 motherboard, and all games have been run from NVMe storage. For resolutions, we're going to be using both of my monitors here. It's 2GB units, one is a 2560 by 1440 27-inch M27Q, and the other is the ultra-wide variant of that, running at a native resolution of 3440 by 1440. So we're going to be covering both standard and ultra-wide resolutions. So why does this test even matter? I mean, the 6900 XT, it is still a beast of a card, but well, the 9070, especially in its bottom of the barrel MSRP guise, it does offer RDNA4 at that price point that is just simply tempting enough to ask the question, is it maybe time to upgrade? So let's dive into some benchmarks. We've tested 6 games here, and these games are simply the games I am currently playing most at the moment. So first up we've got Assassin's Creed Mirage. And when we look at the Ultra preset first, both cards perform very strongly here. The RX 9070 however, it does increase the average and 1% lows by about 14% across the board, and when we jump up to the ultra wide resolution at this same preset, we see the average increase to 20% while still maintaining a plus 14% increase on the lows. Dropping down a notch to very high, we see similar uptake for the lower 1440p resolution. A 12% average uplift and a 13% uplift on the 1% lows, and again when moving to ultra wide, we're getting 19% higher frames on average with a 17% increase in 1% lows. So Mirage is well optimised, but here the 9070 it does still pull ahead, but it is very clear here that the gap is much more pronounced at the higher resolutions. Moving on to Cyberpunk 2077, first off with the RT Medium preset with FSR 3.1 set to quality, and at 1440p it is pretty safe to say that the 9070 walks away with it here. 42% increase in average FPS and a 47% increase in the 1% lows. Jumping up to ultra wide, this again extends even further, with the 9070 beating the 6900 XT by about 48%, while we've got a 50% increase in the 1% lows. If we dial down ray tracing here and go to the ultra preset, at 1440p we still see around a 25% increase in average and 1% lows, and when we jump up to the ultra wide resolution, we're seeing over a 30% increase in both average FPS and 1% lows. So the 9070 is flexing quite hard here, a huge uplift across the board, and if you're playing Cyberpunk with ray tracing, you can certainly feel the difference between the two cards. Now a game which I've put far too much time on is Black Ops 6, and this was one of the games where the increase just simply wasn't to the same level as other games we've tested. Now neither card is a slouch in this game, that's for sure, and the RX 9070 does stretch its legs a little bit when we jump up to the higher resolution at the 21:9 aspect ratio, but overall it's certainly a less dramatic or impactful uplift than you maybe would expect, with the 1% lows especially being pretty flat across the board, which is very interesting and something that we're definitely going to take a look at in a future video. Now one of the original must-have RT titles in Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, and this is the first loss that I've seen for the RX 9070. Now I say it's a loss, but to be honest with you, the performance on the high preset at 1440p, it's pretty much identical for both cards. However, the 1% lows were slightly down when using the RX 9070. However, it's a very strange one, because when we jump up to the ultra wide resolution, so the higher resolution here, we see a 7% increase in average FPS and a 5% increase in the 1% lows, potentially pointing to there being a bottleneck somewhere elsewhere in the system. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered now, and at the very high preset, with native FSR anti-aliasing in play, at 1440p we've seen an 11% increase in average FPS, while the 1% lows only increased by 3%. Jumping up to the 21:9 aspect ratio with the ultra-wide monitor, we see an increase in the average FPS to the tune of 19%, while the 1% lows again only increases by 2%. Finally, we're looking at Indiana Jones in the Great Circle, and first up with the Ultra preset with medium path tracing and FSR set to quality at 1440p, we see average FPS increase by 7% and the 1% lows increase by 27%. When we jump up to the ultra wide, the average FPS increases again by about 14% with a 26% increase in 1% lows. If we dial back the path tracing and go to the Supreme preset, which just uses the standard ray traced global illumination, at 1440p there is an increase of 16% on average, and again a 16% increase in the 1% lows. Jumping up to the ultra wide, it's fairly similar. We see an increase of 15% across the average frame rate, and the 1% lows increase by 14%. So the Indiana Jones does benefit nicely from that 9070, but it's most noticeable when you crank up ray tracing. So what do we make of all this data? Well, across all the tests, the 9070, it came out ahead. There's no way we can cut it any other way. In terms of average FPS, we've seen a 17% increase, and for 1% lows, it averaged out to about 16% across the board. But here's where it gets interesting. As we've seen, the gains just were not uniform on my system. Some titles seen massive leaps, like Cyberpunk and Assassin's Creed, especially as we moved up the resolutions. But others, like Metro Exodus and Black Ops 6, were much more modest. So why is that? In a word, it seemed to be down to CPU bottlenecking. In a few games, especially at 1440p when targeting high refresh rates, I noticed that the CPU was nearly pegged out, while the 9070 it still had some room to breathe. So even though the 9070 can deliver more, if you've got a modest build, there may be other areas of your system that are becoming the limiting factor. And yes, I absolutely know that some of that is going to be down to the settings that I chose, cranking up the resolution or pushing the visuals up a tier. It's going to push the focus solely back onto the GPU. And that's exactly what you see in Assassin's Creed Mirage, where the performance gap widens significantly on the 21:9 aspect ratio compared to the 16:9. But I deliberately benchmarked with the settings that I actually play at, and it was an interesting thing to uncover. So performance claims aside then, how does the 9070 and the 6900 XT really stack up? Well, what I can say is that even in its most basic form, like I said at the start, we're using a Power Color Reaper 9070, which is the bottom of the barrel when it comes to 9070s, and this card, it runs much cooler than the 6900 XT, it runs with a lot less noise as well, and in comparison it sips power. This card at stock will draw 220 watts, you can push it up to about 240, whereas the 6900 XT, well, my one was sitting at about 330 watts out of the box, and it can be pushed even further, seeing that it's a 3x8 pin monster. So that's 40 to 50% more power for 10 to 20% less performance. So even if the FPS uplift alone doesn't convince you, maybe the power savings, the heat reduction and the acoustic combination, it might just sway things for you. What I will say is if you're running a 6900 XT, then first off, fair play, it is still an absolute monster. But if you're looking for a quieter, cooler and more efficient card, with smoother lows and simply much better ray tracing than what is offered on older RDNA4 cards, then the 9070 is a very capable upgrade. Just make sure you're not bottlenecking your experience elsewhere in the system. Now if you like this breakdown, drop a like and subscribe for more grounded GPU reviews, and let me know in the comment section, would you upgrade from a 6900 XT, or does the 9070 just not offer that much of a difference for you to justify it? In the meantime, I'm going to go and do a bit more investigating into the CPU side of things, and we're going to have more on that in a video very soon. For now though, I just want to say thank you very much for watching, take care, and as always, I'll see you in the comment section down below, and in the next video.